The Getz is just a car that says to the world, I don't give a shit about what you think about me and my looks. I don't need your approval.
Mechanically speaking, what a tough little nugget these things are. Unfortunately, a lot of them are ruined by people just not servicing them properly.
It is so much fun, so much fun. Okay, I need you to ask yourself something. What do you require from a relationship? Surely it's honesty, dependability, support, acceptance, and hopefully a form of companionship that won't cost you an absolute fortune. And let's be honest, buying a car is very much like entering a relationship. So does the Hyundai Getz nail the critical criteria? Well, we're about to show you by delving deep into all the critical to know details, like what goes wrong with the exterior. Well, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but nothing. Seriously, like we trawled through owners groups and forums and spoke to owners and mechanics and technicians. Massive thank you to everybody that helped us research this video. But as far as common issues or problems that are the car's fault, there are hardly any. Okay, look, occasionally you might find a tailgate handle that's a little bit temperamental. The paint can be a little bit on the thin side and mark really easily, or even start peeling off in high traffic areas like around the door handles. But really, even all of these problems, the complaints are pretty few and far between. And anyway, the OEM parts are so affordable, plus because the parts themselves are so bloody resilient, you could also just go to a wrecker or buy them online and potentially save even more money. Really, the only big issue that you might run into with the exterior of a Getz actually has nothing to do with the car and way more to do with the previous owners. See, because these are so affordable, plenty of people that have bought them are on really tight budgets, and if they then have an accident, there's a chance that they're going to try to get any accident repairs done as cheaply as possible, and then potentially pass on any ongoing issues to the next owners. Don't let that be you. This is why it is critical to get a vehicle history check at ReDriven.com and make sure you get a pre-purchase inspection carried out on one of these. Look, I know that might sound crazy to spend $300 on the car that's going to be valued from anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000. But trust us, getting a pre-purchase inspection carried out and making sure it ticks all of the boxes, it's going to save you a fortune in heartache. But look, as a quick overview on how to spot accident damage, just look at all the panels of the car. Do they match in color? Are there any signs of overspray anywhere? Are there any signs of rust anywhere? If you notice any of these things, there's a chance it's had a prang and it's been repaired on the Dodge, so just don't buy that car. There's always going to be another Getz, which interestingly is going to be available as a 3-door or a 5-door across 3 iterations. And there are 3 trim specs for the pre, the post, and the post updates. And then here in Australia, pre-update Getz came packing either a 1.3 or 1.5 litre engine. However, the majority on the used market will be either the 1.4 or the 1.6 litres found in the post-update models. But no matter which engine, they're going to be mated to either a 4-speed automatic or a 5-speed manual. And then internationally, not only have these been available with a whole host of other petrol and diesel engines, these have also been called the Hyundai Click or TB, the Dodge Brisa or Brisa, and the Inocom Getz. Now, the easiest way to spot the difference between a pre or a post-update car is that on the pre-updates, the headlights are a bit more rectangular. On the post-update like this one, they're a bit more curvaceous and seductive. Now, look, I know using the word seductive is quite a stretch when talking about a Hyundai Getz, but look at it this way. These things aren't trying to be something that they aren't. They're just so genuine and authentic and honest. See, for me, visually, a Getz is like the polar opposite to a Toyota Land Cruiser that has had a fortune of off-roading parts bolted to it, but then the thing's never going to go off-road ever in its life, or adding aero and race parts to some performance car that's never going to see a racetrack. The Getz is just a car that says to the world, I don't give a shit about what you think about me and my looks. I don't need your approval. And I think that should be applauded. But look, it can't all be good news. What goes wrong with the interior? Nothing. I mean, seriously, even the few little issues and complaints that we found were so few and far between that we wouldn't call them common at all. And look, when we're talking about common things, we're talking about stuff that is intrinsically wrong with the car, like it's the car's fault. We'll get into wear and tear in a sec because, as you can tell, this car has lived a hell of a life. But as far as actual things breaking and falling apart and failing that are the car's fault, honestly, not really anything. Okay, look, some owners have had the occasional air conditioning compressor let go, and some of the plastics can get pretty brittle and then get really rattly on rough roads, and depending on your body shape, the seats might not be the comfiest out there, but besides those sort of issues, nothing inherently goes wrong with the interiors. And even for the few problems that you probably are not going to experience, again, like the exterior, the parts are so cheap, and honestly, some of the repairs are actually quite enjoyable do-it-yourself projects. In the wise words of the ever-eloquent Mr. Ice Cube, you can do it, put your back into it. Again, the biggest issue that you might run into has to do with who owned the car previously. For example, we've read some pretty scary reports regarding previous owners and even dealerships tampering with the odometers to show fewer kilometers. Also, plenty of Getz were used on hire car fleets back in the day. And I don't know about you, but I certainly wouldn't want to buy an ex-hire car that somebody like me has hired for a weekend to see what it can really handle. Actually, look, you know what? Go and watch our Ultimate Used Car Buyer's Guide, because it will run you through all the need-to-know stuff when it comes to buying not only a Getz, but really any used car. But when it comes to interior resilience and wear and tear, look, I know this car incredibly well. It's owned by one of my very closest friends, and it has had a hell of a life, okay? So this is a good indication of what these can take if they're nearly abused. So look, as you can see, the leather on the steering wheel, or leather on the steering wheel, has seen far better days. A lot of the plastics are extremely scratched up. And the gear shift boot, I don't know if this is normal wear and tear. I think it's just biodegrading. But in saying that, it looks like something that a vulture would see and go, oh, there's still a bit of meat left on that. It honestly looks like, I don't know, like a buffalo that's been decomposing on some African savanna. Actually, just on the buffaloes, did you know there are actually 5 subspecies that are recognized as valid by most authorities? You've got the Cape buffalo, obviously the Sudan buffalo, the Nile buffalo, and there's also the mountain buffalo, although it is a disputed subspecies from the Virunga Mountains in Central Africa. But look, back to the Getz, go and have a look at a model that doesn't have 275,000 Ks on it and hasn't been used as a gig car, and you'll be surprised at how good the resilience and interior wear and tear can be. But then again, even in this car, like all the switchgear, it feels like it's from the VHS era, so it just feels tough and rugged. And as far as design goes, I just like that it's a no bullshit interior. It's just, this is a car interior. Ergonomics wise, they're fine, it's nothing special, but everything just does the job. And then as far as actually using the interior in terms of practicality, depending on the head unit you've got a little storage gap under here, you've got a spot perfectly sized for your phone, just there, 2 cup holders here, the spot under the handbrake that is designed specifically to hold dust and life's crap, spot for your car keys here, another larger, actually it's a really big bottle holder behind there in the center console, door bins, but they're only really wide enough to hold things with 2 dimensions, more spots to collect more of life's filth in there. That does look disgusting. You've got like a bookshelf under the steering column just there, and even the top of the dashboard, you could throw some stuff up there, but it's going to slide all over the place. Oh, glove box, pretty good size too. Oh, I nearly forgot as well, there's a little spot here specifically designed to hold a single piece of cabanossi, but for some reason Marissa's has gone and put coins in it. And then when it comes to using the interior in terms of tech and features, look, obviously with the age of these, they're far too old to have things like Apple CarPlay or Android Auto or really any modern phone connectivity. Although some of the more recent models, they do have Bluetooth. Although the quality of that Bluetooth in terms of, you know, remaining paired to your phone and the person that you're talking to being able to hear what you're saying or you being able to hear what they're saying, that can be interesting. Oh, and also the speakers for the stereo, they don't really have the ability to get the party started. But obviously you can upgrade all this stuff really easily. Aftermarket Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, screens, reversing cameras, parking sensors, better speakers, amplifiers, all that stuff is so easy to fit. Even cabanossi. But aside from the infotainment stuff, look, obviously it's pretty much just a list of bare basics in these cars. But unlike some of this car's European competitors, at least all of this stuff, chances are, will still work, including the windscreen wipers. Actually, just on that, it's time for another Wipertech challenge. Will it wipe? Today's victim, delicious sriracha mayo. Now, before we see how they wipe, Wipertech wiper blades are so easy to order online. They're a breeze to fit, and if you order a set via the link, you're going to get 15% off and free express shipping. Let's see if they wipe. Okay, next up, delicious sriracha mayo sauce. There we go. All right. Okay, that was okay, not too bad. Harder than I thought. So if Wipertech blades can handle that, surely they can handle anything that you're going to throw at them. Get yourself a set today. Also, as a massive thank you to my lifelong friend and singer in about 1,000 bands that have been a drummer in, Marissa Soroka. Thank you, darling, so much for lending us your car. You're going home with a free set of these. And if you, watching this, want a set of these, click the link below. Now, a big concern when it comes to the Getz, especially because these are quite often bought as people's first cars, are the levels of safety. Look, honestly, for pre-update examples, it's not great news. ABS or anti-lock brakes were optional. Most of them don't even have a passenger side airbag, and ANCAP only awarded them a 3-star rating, and that was back in 2002. The post-update models, they did improve things with stability and traction control, although that traction control will probably never be required unless you're driving on ice. But ANCAP did award it a 4-star rating, and that was in, I think, 2008, so still not great. But look, for a car of this age and category and asking price, the levels of safety are reasonable. Then in the back seat, I'm exactly 10 centimeters taller than the singer of the song I Can't Get No Satisfaction, Mick Jagger, who, interestingly, his skin is starting to look a lot like the gear shift boot in this car. Anyway, this is in my driving position, and this is comfier than I was expecting. Granted, my legs are crushed up against my body, that is to be expected, but the seats themselves are pretty comfy. There's an okay amount of footroom. This isn't too bad to sit back here, considering the size of the car. Even the windows, they're large, so you don't feel too claustrophobic. It's not great, but I'm actually impressed. And then as far as features and practicality in the back seat, honestly, not a whole lot. You might be allowed to share the giant cup holder back here. And also there are nets on the backs of the seats, but the elastic has certainly seen better days. Now, as far as space and practicality in the boot goes, these things are a bit like Hermione Granger's handbag. It seems to have so much more space inside than what the exterior dimensions could ever possibly allow. Also, unfortunately, Marissa's struts have given up the ghost. This is a bit of a common issue at this age as well. But fun fact about this actual car, to give you an idea of what practicality is possible, I know for a fact that you can fit Marissa's PA system, my drum kit, all the stands, lights, leads, both Marissa and I, and it will take you confidently and securely to a wedding gig in Coffs Harbour and back. Although at freeway speeds, it is a pretty noisy experience. Actually, just on what these are like to drive. Well, I'll be honest, the 1.3 and 1.4 litre engines, they are pretty gutless. And also, if you're tempted to buy the smaller 1.3 or 1.4 litre engines over the big block 1.6 because you're assuming they're going to provide you with better fuel economy, that might not actually be the case. Look, obviously this is going to vary depending on you and how and where you drive, but the problem with the smaller capacity engines are that you have to rev them out so much more to get really anywhere, especially up anything that even resembles an incline, and therefore revving it harder means you're just going to be using more fuel. Whereas the 1.6, like the engine in this car, look, it's certainly no rocket ship by any means, but because it doesn't have to work so hard, theoretically you should be using less fuel. The other reason you should buy a 1.6 over the smaller engines is because of something no one ever talks about, and it's just how incredibly fun these things are to drive. And look, obviously the Getz absolutely nails the daily duty stuff. It's so easy to park and it feels like it was almost designed to contend with traffic, but the thing is, find a little roundabout like this one. It is so much fun, so much fun. Actually, you know how fun these potentially are? These things are used in budget motorsport events all around the world. You go to like a track day, even at Sydney Motorsport Park, and you'll see guys there with slightly modified Getzes having so much fun hammering around racetracks because they're just so light and cheap and hilarious. However, it can be, let's say, lacking in the noise, vibration and harshness levels in those departments, especially on a long drive. I know from experience, on the freeway for more than say 2 hours gets bloody tiring. Although in saying that, if you just fit some extra sound deadening, maybe some premium quality struts and bushes to the suspension and some really good tires, that will go a hell of a long way to make long journeys so much more tolerable. However, there is another potential problem we need to talk about, and that is mechanically what can go wrong with these things. I'm really sorry, I can't tell you because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim.
Unfortunately, mechanically speaking, poor maintenance is most likely going to be the biggest contributor to reliability issues here. The thing is, they are really cheap to buy, which means a lot of people who are on a budget buy them, and a lot of people just don't care about them that much because they're just a cheap car. And the funny thing is, they are a cheap car, but they are also ridiculously cheap to fix. I'll give you a couple of comparison prices here. Now, just to give you an idea how I got these prices, this is an average basically of the retail price of those parts. On these things, ignition coils, on the early models I should say, ignition coils and leads often play up, causes a misfire. It's a relatively simple fix. Now, a ignition coil and a set of leads, the cost of the parts is about 275 bucks. Now compare that to a similarly aged Subaru Forester that has coil and leads. The parts for that car is about 400 bucks. Big difference. The right-hand engine mount on these is also another common failure point. It just causes a weird vibration. It just feels terrible. The engine mount there is about $150 worth. Now, if you compare that to a Mazda 2, which also has a similar engine mount issue, the mount for that is about 250 bucks. Another big difference in price. The water pumps do occasionally leak on those, and they're down in the timing belt area. So timing belt is due every 90,000 Ks, so you're going to do the water pump at the same time. Now, a timing belt kit with a water pump for these is about $250, give or take, which is about half the price of a Volkswagen Up. Big difference. The AC compressor on these is also another fairly common failure point. Now, there's a big variety in prices and quality of compressors, but on average you can expect to pay about 500 bucks for a compressor on one of these things, compared to a Toyota Yaris, which is about 700 bucks. Another common problem we see on these things is noisy hydraulic lifters, or just tappet noise basically. Look, that can be worse if the car has been poorly serviced, and sometimes just changing the oil makes a huge difference there. But in other cases, that can be a sign that the engine is just about clapped out, unfortunately. Now, if it is clapped out and you do have to put a new one in it, you can buy an engine for one of these for about 2.5 grand on average, depending on its condition, right? Now let's compare that to a Fiat 500, the 4-cylinder version of those. That is probably a third of the price for an engine in a Fiat 500. So if you have one and the engine is clapped out because of poor servicing, or if it's got 300,000 Ks on it, cheap engine, not a bad idea. That way you can just keep it running for another 200,000 Ks, just do the services and it should be good. Actually, that's exactly what happened to our test car. Marissa, the owner of that car, put an engine in that thing for about 3 grand all up. So yeah, very affordable.
But the other really important thing that you need to consider if you're in the market for one of these is, what else could you buy instead that ticks all of these boxes? We'd be checking out the first gen Honda Jazz, the Toyota Echo, the Suzuki Swift, or even early Mazda 2s. And look, yes, there are a whole host of small European hatches available, but when you're shopping at this sort of budget, the cost of parts, maintenance, and just overall reliability need to be very high on the priority list. And here in Australia, unless you're planning on doing all of the maintenance work yourself, we'd just be going with a car that's a much safer bet, like a Hyundai Getz. Obviously these aren't perfect, and clearly avoid any that have a sketchy history. And yeah, the safety levels on this are maybe only just slightly better than a motorbike, but find a good one of these and you're going to have a solid, no-nonsense, dependable partner on 4 wheels. The right Getz can be a healthy and fulfilling relationship personified in car form, but so can one of these. But if you were to buy this or this, what would you buy instead? Let us know in the comments. See you next time.
Actually, that's exactly what happened to
Oh, you got a fly. Hang on. You and flies, man.
Me fly.
Oh, hang on, I'm fixing it. Wait up. I've always got your back. I've always got your back. No matter how violent and vicious the animal is.